And with that, thank you. I'll hand it over to Rep. James Tallarico to open us up.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ali. Thank you all for being here. Welcome to my district. This is House District 50. If you've ever, the show was filmed just on the other side of 35 at our high school football stadium. We care about public education in this community, just like every community across Texas. 6 years ago, Greg Abbott showed up at this school behind me, Palmer Lane Elementary. He held a press conference with lots of cameras and promised to invest in public schools like this one. Now, this school behind me is at risk of closing because Greg Abbott has refused to invest a penny of new funding into our public schools since 2019. Now Texas ranks 43rd in the nation in per student education funding. Texas teachers are making less than they did 10 years ago when you adjust for inflation. And local property taxes are through the roof because our state government has failed to do its fair share of school funding. 6 years ago, Greg Abbott promised to invest in public schools like this one. Now he's letting them close. So what changed? Follow the money. A group of billionaires who want to privatize our Texas schools bought our governor. One of them, an East Coast billionaire named Jeff Yass, gave our governor one check for $6 million, the largest campaign contribution in Texas history. So now Greg Abbott is starving our public schools and pushing a private school voucher scam, which will take even more money out of schools like this one and put it in the hands of millionaires and billionaires. Greg Abbott broke his promise that he made here at Palmer Lane Elementary. He's no longer working for the nearly 6 million Texas school children. Now he works for billionaires who can write a $6 million check. You're going to hear not just from legislators, but also from a parent and a teacher. Some of the parents and teachers here are fighting to keep this school open. They're doing everything they can to protect our children, even though Greg Abbott won't. You're going to hear from Rep. Gina Hinojosa. You're going to hear from one of those parents and a former teacher. You're going to hear from Rep. Retta Bowers. You're going to hear from Chairman Gene Wu. And then I'll come back up here and answer a few questions. Thank you again for being here. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Rep. Gina Hinojosa.
Thank you, Representative Tallarico. I'm State Representative Gina Hinojosa, and I represent Central Austin in the Texas House. But most importantly, I am a mother to a child in Texas public schools. I first ran for office because my son's school was threatened for closure. Our schools have been in crisis for years, and Governor Abbott has only made it worse. About 2 years ago, my son didn't even get a 5th grade teacher because there were no teachers willing to work for the pay and under the conditions that Austin ISD was offering. We have a teacher retention crisis in this state, and Governor Abbott has known about it for years but has done nothing. And in fact, the last time he convened the legislature, he held precious tax dollars that our neighborhood schools needed hostage and teacher pay raises hostage because he didn't get his voucher bills, his scam passed.
Right.
Schools closed, our students suffered, and teachers left. Teachers also leave the profession because politicians in Austin micromanage the profession and compel our teachers to teach to a deeply flawed test. And I will tell you right now that as a mother of a child in public schools, I'll be damned if my son has to continue to take the STAR test while wealthy families get to opt out of the STAR with our taxpayer dollars. If the STAR test is good enough for 5.5 million students in Texas public schools, it's good enough for all students receiving a taxpayer-funded public education or education. And if it's not, then no child should be subjected to the STAR test or the accountability system that our state inflicts on our students. This should not be complicated. This should not be so political. Once upon a time, not too long ago, we could all agree that the best thing we could do for our students was to put a great teacher in the classroom.
That's right.
Then Governor Abbott and too many Republican leaders started to vilify our teachers and our neighborhood schools, all to take money out of our classroom and line the pockets of the profiteers. Taxpayer-funded vouchers. Governor Abbott will pillage and plunder our schools until there is nothing left. But you can stop him, because real change doesn't happen under the Capitol dome. Real change happens in our communities, in our neighborhoods. Tell your friends. Let them know that taxpayer-funded vouchers will hurt our kids and hurt our neighborhood schools. On February 22nd, there will be a Save Texas Schools rally at the Texas Capitol. Please come, show up in force, and if you can't come, organize, and I am asking you, I am begging you to please use it for our kids. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rena Clegg, and I've been a public school teacher in Texas for 23 years. I worked at this campus right behind us for 17 of those years. This is a Title I campus with low SES students, and yet time and time again, it's been a highly rated campus. In fact, it was so highly rated in 2019 that our campus was chosen by Governor Abbott to sign HB 3 on the stage. And he sat there in front of all of us, and he promised to give us a fully funded school. He called it a sweeping and historic school finance bill. And then, thanks to a district budget crisis in 2023, I stood in front of that same stage and begged our school board members not to close our campus. My son was there. He was a student in that. Those were my family members. I worked there and gave everything I had to those students, those families. I stood with them and I begged and pleaded and I fought for our schools, and I'm still fighting to get our public schools fully funded. That day in 2019 was the last time I remember hearing Governor Abbott talk about investing in public education. Since then, he's championed vouchers that would take even more of our tax dollars out of our public schools. The school board ultimately did not close our schools, but to stay afloat, they were forced to make painful cuts, and their budget problems did not disappear. Most Texas districts are facing the same problem right now. This is not because of wasteful spending or high teacher salaries. It's due to lack of funds from the state of Texas. It's because our state leaders are actively working to destroy public schools in the name of school choice. They have the power to reverse this crisis right now. For years, we have been calling on Governor Abbott and our legislators to fight as hard for our neighborhood schools as we parents, teachers, students, and elected local leaders are fighting for them. But instead, they're pushing a private school voucher scam that's estimated to take $1 billion out of public schools and will put $4 billion of our tax dollars into private schools by 2028. To be clear, school choice exists in Texas already. I don't just stand here today as a teacher. I'm a mother. And my 9-year-old son attends school in Pflugerville ISD. But we don't live here. And I don't work here. We applied for an out-of-district transfer. It was easy, it was free, and he is currently thriving at River Oaks Elementary. We already have choice within our public education system. We don't need voucher scams. We need fully funded public schools for the 5.5 million Texas children in this state. That is what our children deserve. That is what my son deserves. That is what my students deserve. And that is what we will continue to fight for. Today, I call on Greg Abbott and our state legislators to finally do the right thing and fully fund our public schools. And I beg them to listen. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, and thank you so very much for your passionate remarks. Thank you to my colleagues, to Rep. James Tallarico, Representative Gina Hinojosa, and Chairman Jean Wu. And I must pause for a moment and say Happy Black History Month.
Yes.
Good morning again, everyone. I am Representative Retta Andrews Bowers, and I have the honor of representing House District 113, which includes the wonderful communities of Garland, Mesquite, Rowlett, and Siegelville, just north of here. I want to take a moment to sincerely thank each of you for being here today, as well as those tuning in from home. Your time and engagement means so much, and I truly appreciate your commitment to this issue and the important conversations we're having. Education is the foundation of opportunity. Every child, regardless of race, income, or zip code, deserves a fully funded, but we've got to do more. Voucher programs threaten that very promise. Black students stand to lose the most. Public schools educate the vast majority of Black children in Texas. When the state diverts public dollars into private institutions, it drains resources from the schools that need them most. Texans already struggle with underfunded schools, overcrowded classrooms, and overworked teachers. Taking money away does not create opportunity, it deepens inequality. Public schools serve every child. Private schools do not. They can pick and choose their students, denying admission based on test scores, discipline history, disabilities, or even whether a student fits their culture. That means Black students, especially those who need extra support, are often excluded.
Right.
And where do they go? Where do they go, y'all, when vouchers fail them? Right back to an underfunded public school that has lost even more resources. Vouchers also do not cover the real cost of private school. Tuition alone far exceeds what a voucher provides, not to mention transportation, books, and fees. Families who already have the means to afford private schools are the ones who benefit, while working class Black families are left behind. Even worse, voucher programs produce weak academic outcomes. Multiple studies show that students using vouchers often perform worse in math and reading than their public school peers. Unlike public schools, private schools receiving voucher funds are not required to meet the state academic standards, employ certified teachers, or report performance data. We demand accountability from public schools, so why should private schools be exempt? Public schools have long been a powerful tool for Black students to achieve upward mobility. Historically, Black families fought for equal access to education, from Brown versus Board of Education to the Civil Rights Movement, threatened to undo that progress, fueling racial and economic segregation by shifting funds away from schools that serve Black children. If we truly care about educational opportunity for Black students and all students, the answer is not vouchers. It is fully funding our public schools. That means teachers what they deserve. Reducing class sizes, increasing resources for special education and bilingual programs, and strengthening college and career pathways. Voucher program students behind. Instead of funding a broken system that benefits a select few, we must invest in the public schools that serve all our children. And I will continue fighting to protect public education, and I call on all my colleagues to do the same. Our students deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Gene Wu. I'm the state rep from House District 137 and also the House Democratic Caucus Chair. What you see today, you see teachers, parents, you see Democratic leaders. What you see is a united coalition to stand against voucher scams. It is a united coalition that says, put our students first. put our teachers first, put our schools and our communities first over the billionaires who are pushing this. Yesterday, Governor Abbott gave his state of the state and said he understood what crisis our school system is in. He says he understood that schools are about to close around the state. He understood that rural schools have gone from 5 days down to 4 days, maybe down to 3 days, or no days at all. United on this side to explain why to pay the rich. Why is it okay when there are no produces on our grocery shelves? Is it okay to take our hard-earned tax dollars and give it to rich people who didn't even ask for it? When veterans and the elderly and disabled are not even getting their basic checks needed to survive on a day-to-day basis, when we are not making it forward, how do we tell people we're going to take your money and give it to rich people so they can send their kids to private school, so they don't have to have their kids with your kids?
Yes.
How do we do that? Somebody on Governor Abbott's team needs to explain that, or maybe better yet, Governor Abbott needs to come here in front of this school and explain why he allowed this school to be underfunded, why he held them hostage, why he held them hostage to do the bidding of billionaires who don't even live in this state.
Yes.
And this is not a Democrat versus Republican issue, I promise you. Because last time, there were 24 Republicans who gave it everything, who put everything on the line, and 15 of them sacrificed their entire political careers, sacrificed their political careers to protect their communities, to do what was right, to make sure that the public school system in this state was protected. Honor their sacrifice. Recognize what heroes they are. Take the time and speak up. The legislature is not going to stop this. The Democrats or Republicans are not going to stop this. It's going to be you. And neighbors and friends who give a crap about our education, who believe that our school system is the simply absolute most vital component of our society.
Yes.
People who understand that if we do not provide our education, our students the very best education, then what are we doing? Why are we here? What's the point of all this if we're not doing our best for our kids? Go and demand it. This is a call to Democrats, Republicans, Independents, anybody who will listen. If you are out there, you're listening, and you care about what happens to our state, you want us to go back to a powerful, robust middle class where people have good jobs if they can graduate, let's do that. Let's fight for that. Let's fight for the future we want. Say no to voucher scams.
We have time for 3 questions, so before, just as a reminder, members are all over the state, so happy to help you find someone for your local media market. Also, Chairman Romero with the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, for anybody that needs Spanish interview as well, is available right over here.
And also, afterwards, members are going to come here and they're going to shoot some of their own videos from the podium. So if you want to capture some of that, you're welcome to. But just FYI, that's what's going to happen.
But yeah, we'll open it up to questions and hand it back to Rep. James Sawyer.
I have a question. Aaron Davis with Spectrum News. The governor also mentioned teacher pay raises on its emergency item list. How far do you think that will go to help see improvement in public schools?
Well, I want to be clear, the governor did not make teacher pay raises for every teacher a priority. He made teacher pay raises for some teachers a priority. We're all for raising the ceiling for our best teachers. But what's more important is raising the floor for every teacher.
Yes.
Because the folks who are leaving the classroom are not our veteran teachers, it's our first year, second year teachers. That's where we need pay to treat those teachers like the professionals they are. So we need holistic, across the board teacher pay raises. This caucus put forward a bill to give every single teacher in the state a $15,000 pay raise. That's the kind of bold action we need if we're going to solve this school funding crisis.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something that I've asked multiple times before. I'm sure you're well aware that the Senate is planning on taking up its priority legislation on ESAs this week, which would give $10,000, more than the $8,000 last session, to these private school families. I want to ask you, Senator, something that Senator West said last week. I have the quote. He said, "The die has been cast. The fact is, it's going to pass." The question is, how do you make it a better bill? That's a Democrat on the Senate side saying that. What's your thought? And is there a point where I know I've asked this before. Is there a point where you're going to say, yes, the bill is going to pass. Let's make it the best that we can?
Well, Democrats in the House don't give up that easily.
Yeah. Yes.
And I will never compromise on giving our hard-earned tax dollars to wealthy parents who don't need it. I have members of the media here. I want to encourage all of you to stop adopting Republican slogans to describe this bill. It is not an ESA, it's not school choice. In fact, it's the school's choice, because private schools can deny admission to any kid for any reason they want. How is it choice if the private school has all the power in this equation? How is it choice when a majority of counties in the state of Texas don't have a single private school in them? How is it choice when private schools don't have to provide special education or transportation services? And how is it choice when the voucher doesn't even cover the full cost at most private schools in the state of Texas? Many of you know that I used to be a public school teacher before I ran for office. If you gave my former students on the west side of San Antonio a $10,000 voucher, there's still no way they could afford a $20,000 a year private school. But here's the deal. The rich parent who is already sending their kid to a $20,000 a year private school, they're about to get a $10,000 discount, a $10,000 coupon at our expense. Vouchers are welfare for the wealthy. And if it passes in Texas, it'll be a historic, tragic transfer of wealth from the bottom to the top.
Right. Representative Wu, can I get you to come to the podium, sir? I heard this last session when y'all had this news conference. Same thing. You stopped it in the specials.
Yep.
What's the strategy now? As we just heard, Governor Abbott says that he's got the votes in the House. So how do you stop it? How do you change it? Can you make it a change?
So even the governor's best estimate numbers, the shiniest rose-colored tinted numbers, gives them like maybe a 2, maybe 3 member advantage at best, right? And what that says to everyone out there is there's a lot of members on the yes side who are kind of wishy-washy. And if you guys want to stop this, if the people out there really want to stop this, call. If you are represented by a Republican, every Democrat is not here, but every Democrat is going to vote against vouchers, is a hard no on vouchers. Promise you, okay? What people need to be doing is calling the Republican representatives. Call the governor, call the lieutenant governor, call your state senator, call your state rep, call them and tell them, I'm not interested in giving my tax dollars to rich people so they can send their kids to religious private school.
As a follow-up, is there a plan on a different educational issue of increasing what Representative Tellerico was saying? Is there a plan, is there a bill in place that's put on the floor in the committee that raises the base allotment, that raises the teacher pay? Are we going to go that route again?
I think there's multiple bills that have already been filed that deal with that, just like last time, right? The question is that everyone's kind of waiting for is Governor Abbott going to hold that hostage again, right? Whether he's going to use the schools as a hostage for a second time in order to get vouchers, right? And I think the House, the Senate, probably everybody on the floor is ready to pass a school pass a bill that increases the funding to schools. Everyone's ready. The question is Governor Abbott ready?
Can I add something real quick? Again, Greg Abbott is good at playing y'all in the media. He has a habit of declaring victory prematurely. I remember the Monday before we beat vouchers on the floor of the House in 2023, Greg Abbott said he was on the 1-yard line. But I was counting votes and knew he didn't have it, and so I asked some of my colleagues, whose 1-yard line is he on? So I want to caution you from buying into the manufactured momentum that Greg Abbott and his team are so good at creating. Because what matters is what happens on the floor of the House. Yes. And just like Chairman Wu said, there are a lot of members that have been bullied into supporting vouchers. Many of them have a history of opposing them, and many of them still harbor doubts about what the details of the bill will look like. And so the devil's in the details in these bills, and I look forward to a robust debate on the floor of the House, and I wouldn't count us out yet. Any other questions?
People want to know who these billionaires are and how they can affect them.
Sure, yeah, and we're happy to call them out. I've already talked about Jeff Yass, who's a TikTok billionaire from the East Coast, gave Greg Abbott one check for $6 million, the largest political contribution in Texas history. Cumulative, he gave Greg Abbott $12 million last year to pass a private school voucher scam. Greg Abbott took that money and primaried Republican conservative legislators whose only sin was supporting their local public schools.
Right.
But I also want to mention Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilks.
Yes.
These are two of the biggest Republican donors in the state. Their stated goal is to dismantle public education and replace it with private religious schooling for every Texas child. They've given money to every single Republican senator. They've given money to a majority of Republican House members. For some of those lawmakers, a majority of their total campaign contributions come from these two billionaire pastors. So we can talk about all three of them. We can also talk about Betsy DeVos. Her organization has funded primary opponents to many conservative Republicans across the state who stand against their voucher scam.
Thank y'all so much. Members are available for comment, and Rep. Ramon Romero for Spanish interviews as well, amongst others. Thank y'all so much.
And members, y'all can use this podium. We'll get you a video if you want.